generation of vipers, flee from the wrath.
Okay, roll camera.
Here, hold this.
Cut, I do. Action, cut. Action. Action. Lights. Here we go. And action. Action. Shadow Man.
Okay, Mark, now slowly move towards the antenna.
How can we do some sort of big, epic type of film that didn't cost an arm and a leg? So I thought, well, the first film we did, Star Quest, we had all these spaceships and sets and costumes, and basically everything had to be made for the picture.
I didn't even have the vision then of what he was trying to accomplish. I mean, we were shooting the rooftop of this warehouse that we were shooting at, and I'm thinking, what is he going to do with this? And he creates this entire landscape.
Well, what's something we could shoot fast and cheap and still be exciting? And so, I came up with this idea of this sort of alternate world, which ended up becoming purgatory.
I remember sitting in the theater and saying, okay, now it's making sense, because filming it, I wasn't sure how parts that we were filming were going to fit into the movie.
On a picture like this, what Philip has to deliver is everything, because it's not just a picture about where the actors. It's not the talking head picture.
He did everything. It was just Phil running around with his camera, setting up lights, telling you where he needed you. But it was fun to watch this guy work and look at the outside, at the shell. When inside, you just know there was like a million different guys running around in Phil's brain, throwing switches and doing this and doing that, doing everything.
Just come off a very heavy election year. It was a very good year, and it was November. And I'm looking towards unemployment for the next few months. And I thought, you know what? This is the time to go make a movie. So I stunned my wife and said, yep, we're going to go make a movie.
Phil's wife was great to just hang out with and talk to while she was working on costumes or fixing something to eat, which I had her doing every 3 minutes she had.
I went down to Home Depot and with my list, because I'd already calculated all the supplies I was going to need and how much I could spend.
We were working in a tiny little warehouse that we had adapted to a soundstage.
Looking at 2,000 pounds of wood in this empty, dusty place, going, what the hell have I gotten myself into?
There were a number of sets, or if because of some of the larger things that were done on blue screen, there were partial sets, and you had to work on the blue screen a lot.
It's just me in this empty space, and we're going to build churches and Despiser courtyards and rooftops, and and that was the beginning.
And we didn't have gaffers. We didn't have assistants. We didn't have dressing rooms and things like that. So, you're working with a bare bones budget.
But I did create a virtual version of our studio space, a warehouse that we rented for 2 months, and created little virtual versions of the sets we were going to construct to see how they would fit. And actually did lighting tests on those computer versions of the sets just to sort of get a sense of how it's going to look on camera and what kinds of shots I could get.
Even though it's an independent film, we didn't have a lot of money, it didn't really matter.
The first time I saw it then, I was just blown away. It all came together really well.
The bulk of the production was December with a break for Christmas and then January. The production value was very high considering the resources that we had.
The second day that I showed up, we were actually working against a blue screen, which I had never done before, and didn't understand the significance of that.
It's very hard to envision sometimes when we're doing a blue screen type filming. But what it is, we're actually standing next to.
Here, in my opinion, is where the director becomes critical.
Just want to give you time to cut. So you wanted basically, he cocks it down here, dying, pow.
The thing you've got to do is, you could, doing all these things to react to things that aren't there, and you've got to try to remind yourself, and sometimes Philip would say a little bit less, because the monster will do it. you're reacting to things that are happening. And the less you can do, if you just have to run, you run.
I remember one point sitting on a box in front of the blue screen, pretending I'm driving a car.
Whip your head around, they're behind you. Good.
You know, and they'd say, okay, look right, look left, you know, just move your hands like this. And I'm saying, there's no way.
Especially working on a set where there wasn't much of a set. You know, Phil had minimal stuff around. He kept telling us, well, this will be filled in, this will be filled in. I'm like, filled in with what? So when I saw it, I just had to sit back and go, oh, he meant filled in.
And then I would drop them in these virtual sets, and I could do these amazing camera moves. I mean, we could start in on a close-up. Jake's face in one of the Camaros and pull out and see his car moving over the hill and pull out and see Mark Redfield driving in his car and just get these amazing, impossible camera moves. Visual effects were created mainly by me and a very talented animator, Corey Collins, who lives in Georgia.
Hey, you can't do character animation with Imagine.
Phil and I were on the Imagine mailing list, and I had posted some animation that I had done.
And started emailing back and forth, and I started talking about this project.
Phil had mailed me the script that had a basic description of the creatures that he wanted. I did some pencil sketches, scanned them in, and emailed him.
He worked with this great piece of software called Organica, which is a metaballs modeler of sorts.
And I would build the model that we used from in the computer from there. I started out with a wireframe and then added the maps to it for bump and specularity.
What we did do is shot an actor in a black suit, sort of miming the motions of the Despiser.
Then I would take that and animate to the theme that he sent me.
He would basically send me the scene files, and then I would place the Despiser in the computer-generated environments and do the lighting and the camera work. And I was responsible for the sets and all the physical aspects of the shot.
We were both using the same software, so I could lay out the animation and just send him the data file, which is very small compared to the finished animation.
And I had to feed the machines in the basement. You know, it was almost like a little shop of horrors. Feed me. Some of these shots were taking 20 minutes a frame to render.
Everything I did was pretty much from 1 a.m. to 6 a.m. in the morning. You know how that goes. At 3 o'clock, you're writing over files that you don't want to, and you're emailing stuff that you really didn't mean to email, and it gets kind of ghastly.
I'm self-taught on all this stuff. I mean, I had no training. I've never had training for anything, to be quite frank. And Corey's the same way. We just sort of, you know, we had this desire to make this stuff, and this was such a liberating tool, and we dug into these sometimes very obscure manuals, if you even had a manual, with some of these things and figured it out.
It was just neat. It was like a dream. Everything was just so surreal and cool. The effects were phenomenal.
You know, sometimes I did see conceptual sketches of some of the sets, so partial sets were built, so I knew, you know, what it was going to work like. And then when you saw the whole thing, you said, ah, that's it.
Because he had effects in, I mean, almost every damn shot.
There's hardly a shot in this picture that hasn't been touched in some form in After Effects, which is an amazing compositing tool made by Adobe. You know, it just allows you to layer and paint and manipulate and color correct elements and bring in three-dimensional rendered elements and smoke that we shot as separate pieces. I think it was a week before we started shooting. I had nobody in the role of Charlie Roadtrap. And Mark Redfield had worked with Tara Bilkins.
He goes, well, why don't we set up an audition? I said, all right, you know, I'm up for it. I'll never forget it. We went into this room at my school at Towson, and myself, Mark Redfield, and Dan Poole went into this room, and I had this gun and this leather jacket, and Dan, who's great at stunt work, thank God. He's like, oh, this will be great, you know, you just have to beat me up. Well, we were throwing each other all over the room, and it was pretty cool. And Mark's like, here, we'll put it together, I'll send it to Phil.
I ended up on Despiser by being Mark Redfield's chauffeur for a few days, and you know, because he's not a real driver, but he plays one on TV.
I'm the daddy.
And Phil said, "Can you play Shadow Man?" And I said, "Kick his ass!"
All of the actors were great to work with, and really make just a whole cauldron of boiling fun happen on a shooting day. And the hours go by very quickly with a crew like that.
The character Fumito Misawa, you know, he's a very stoic, very proud individual. I auditioned for it. based on the fact that my mother's half Japanese, and I said, what the heck, let's give it a shot. And, you know, to be able to play something like that has to do with my culture, my background, was a lot of fun for me.
After a while, you just get giddy and you're saying, okay, this is pointless now, we're never going to make it through this without laughing, because that happened many times.
In fact, we even played a couple of jokes on the director. You know, we have this one scene coming on the rooftop. He's saying, yelling action, whatever. Well, we had switched coats. He's filming, has no idea what's going on. Suddenly he realizes.
The very first night, I remember, was freezing. Let's say our meal. We must have been there, I don't know, 10 hours, and it was so cold.
But the cold was great. It actually became an asset because you'd see people prep. And I love that. And so Purgatory is a pretty cold place.
And I just remember Jake constantly, he had this one line, and he kept running up. He kept running up to me in my face and saying it right in front of my face. And I just busted out laughing.
Camaraderie on set was great. I mean, everybody just laughed it up.
Well, it got basically down to the point where we had to go kill our own food. I'm kidding, I'm teasing.
Shooting guns was great. And whenever I tell people about the movie before it came out, I'd say, you gotta see this. I'm shooting a machine gun in this movie. And they'd look at me and be like, what? You're shooting a what? Oh, it was so much fun. I could have done that throughout the whole movie.
Because even these prop guns are incredibly dangerous. I mean, they're very loud. You know, if they go off near somebody's face, I mean, there's some energy there. And there's one shot particularly where Mark Redfield's just letting these ragmen have it with a machine gun.
We used dummy guns like you might see at, you know, Planet Hollywood type scenario. And we would sync them with strobe lights. And then we'd have to shake accordingly, you know, how we thought a machine gun would be shooting. And then the muzzle flash and the shells ejecting and whatnot were all added later. Visually, it looks, I think, very accurate and very real.
I put the blood splashes in post. So we can move fast. We don't have to worry about, you know, hurting people or setting up plastic barriers to protect equipment. And the safety issues drop way down. You know, on its surface, you know, it's an adventure, shoot 'em up. You know, that's the stuff, that's the hook, that's the fun part. But underneath, you know, it's really, it's a love story.
The great thing about the script is that the characters are very human. I mean, it goes into a complete fantastical action adventure. It's a running, jumping, shooting picture. But it really starts with these key characters that are very, very human and have very real-world dilemmas.
Anyone who's in a relationship will start to identify with the two of us because we've all been tested.
It's not a love story on the surface, but the thing that drives Gordon is, and the thing that drives Maggie, is the love that they have for each other.
I believe throughout the movie you'll see how connected I actually am to Gordon.
She decides to leave him, basically, to shake him up a little bit.
You gotta believe in me, Maggie.
You've got to believe in yourself first. You'll see that ultimately what Maggie had to do will really work in their favor.
But at the beginning of the picture, she says, I believed in you, past tense. And at the end of the picture, when they're about to throw that grenade and blow that bug-eyed despiser up, I believe in you, she says. And that gives him that little extra spinach like Popeye, you know what I mean, to pull himself through.
Maggie was such an ethereal character. She was Gordon's muse.
Gordon, through the thing, has sort of done the ancient hero's journey, where he's learned a lot about himself and found something about his inner resilience and sacrificed a little bit. Joseph Campbell, if you read Joseph Campbell, lays out about what the hero's journey and what the hero's quest is. And here's a person who, you know, one of the first things that has to happen to him is that the world has to be torn asunder. There has to be something that is put out of whack, that he somehow, through a series of discoveries that he's going to make on his own, will put the world back together again. Through the course of this, there is this idea that, you know, Maggie and Gordon, they never don't love each other.
I love you.
I know, Gordon.
They're just strained enough that it's put to the test. And everything that happens in the movie, in some ways, is a great metaphor for all of us who have had that love put to a test.
You know, this is a pretty stylized looking film. And I like to think of it in sort of a Wizard of Oz alternate world. And, you know, either you buy into it or you don't. I mean, it is a fantasy. In some respects, you know, one could could claim, did Gordon ever really go to purgatory? Is this all just some sort of weird construction in his imagination, him being a fantasy artist? So I thought, between that and the sort of Oz-like environment that people would sort of buy into the whole fantasy aspect. Once you're there, once you kind of know the rules, and just accept it and suspend disbelief and have fun with the whole thing and drive cars and shoot bad guys and blow things up.